The Trevor Project is an American non-profit organization dedicating themselves to provide suicide prevention efforts and around-the-clock support services to the LGBTQ+ community. They offer a free telephone number for assistance operated by trained counselors. Since 1998, they've been making advances and improvements towards furnishing respect and tolerance for LGBTQ+ people that goes exceptionally with their youth as well. Now they have an international online community group focused on connecting with LGBTQ+ youth with Trevor Space, named after the company itself that is. But in over 25 years, there came many groups sharing the same initiative as the Trevor Project that too offers services to the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, and more. But nobody has innovated the future of the Pride safe space more than the Trevor Project. So let me give you a quick rundown of what the Trevor Project really is to jog your memory. Who are they? A charity group with the motive to prevent suicide and supply 24/7 support through the phone. Who do they appeal to? People of the LGBTQ+ youth who need somebody to care for them and tolerate their existence when nobody else around them could. How many lives have they impacted? Possibly hundreds and thousands, if not millions, of young LGBTQ+ lives who chose not to kill themselves tonight and instead dial for some free help. How are they compared to other charity groups? Surprisingly well compared to most of them. They're far better than Peter, I can affirm. What was the Trevor Project based on or inspired by? Well, that's a complicated question. Again, the Trevor Project is potentially one of the most humane and truthful non-profits in the nation. With that being said, one thing that really sparks curiosity about them are their origins. It would be a big surprise if I told you that Trevor wasn't inspired by a true story or anything. It's actually based on a fictional short film created by the founder in 1994 of the same name, Trevor. A story about a teenage boy who attempts suicide after being rejected by his friends for being gay. But how does a short film connect to the nation's leading organization dedicated to helping gay people? You see, Peggy Rajski, am I getting this right? Peggy Rajski. You see, Peggy Rajski was an indie filmmaker, and Trevor won an Academy Award for Best Short Film a year later. When HBO decided to air it in 1998 to television, Peggy realized that some of the program's young viewership might be facing the same situation Trevor was having at the time, and back then there was no outlet with a purpose to promote tolerance in the LGBTQ community and aid in suicide prevention for them. So in the same year, Peggy created the Trevor Project, named after the 1994 film she directed. Now, I understand that it would be somewhat strange to start a charity based on something that is a work of total fiction, which has exceptionally high standards on the count of its Academy Award. I mean, you wouldn't see other organizations be created out of something that's other than non-fictional stories and lines of history, other than the Ronald McDonald House, of course. And with Trevor, it's a rare case. On the contrary, it did continue to serve a real legacy to help LGBTQ+ youth in crisis, making more of an impact than what most charity organizations should be doing nowadays. Yet the film was so special to the LGBTQ youth that it would later be adapted into a stage-to-screen musical, distributed by Disney Plus last year, which we'll talk about later on in the video. But how special was the film it was based on? Trevor as a film itself is just as special as the Trevor Project, not only because it set the building ground for it, but it was an amazing film in general, justifiably winning an Oscar because of it, and for some pretty good reasons too. Trevor has a riveting story, a unique main character with a dynamic and a joyful personality, almost, and the ability to connect to its target audience in relatability, making it very appealing to gay folks, as well as one of the most memorable pieces of entertainment media in the history of Pride. And you know what? I love it for the same reasons too. So let's take a look at the 90s short film that kickstarted one of America's biggest cruelty-free non-profit organizations. The film starts off with Trevor's gay-ass narration. The film begins with a montage of our main character, a teenager named Trevor, playing dead around the house, whom afterwards hands out the narrative through his diary, emphasizing on how nobody would care if he died, especially his parents, who are too busy watching TV addressing the criticism of parents spending their lives watching television and not giving a hoot about their own kids anymore.
I walked into the living room while they were watching TV. Fell dead to the floor. No response from them. I think they have replaced their natural spontaneity.
The next day, Trevor asks his best friend Walter Stillman about, "Whoa there, my friend. What were you gonna ask about again?"
Today I talked to Walter Stillman about masturbation. He said that I should be careful.
Yeesh! Well, there goes my monetization! If I had any. Yeah, I might start a Ko-Fi. So Trevor asks his best friend Walter about masturbation and is invited to look at his sperm through the microscope. Totally not a gay thing to do. We're shortly introduced to Trevor's obsession with Diana Ross, playing her music and singing along before his mom walks into the room, deeply relating to Diana personally, and even plans to dress up as her for Halloween.
It would be the worst thing in the world if I couldn't listen to
I got a small friend who has a fat friend who had a big friend who gave birth to many friends with our flashlights to the sky. We waited for them to land.
The next diary entry, Trevor narrates a big score for today by befriending Pinky Faraday, the local cool kid at school and aspiring young athlete for the school's baseball team.
Dear Diary, I've become best friends with Pinky.
He even expresses how he'd take a kill for Pinky because he loved him so much. The next diary entry cuts to later that night when Trevor gets invited by a girl named Kathy to a specific place outside of a hotel where all the kids make out, only to practice doing the same with her, whom he expresses his unattractiveness towards her because Trevor had other things in mind.
It's not that she's not attractive. It's just that I've had other things in my mind.
Hey, yeah, what are we doing out of the box? This is dangerous. A little kid might come along and think we were coming.
Dear Diary, I've made up my mind about my future. Pinky, I've decided that
You two poop.
be my life.
Later that night, Trevor explains to Pinky that he's gonna pursue a career in theater, which definitely shows as he takes upon the responsibility of training the other boys to do a musical note. Well, that's one way to get shoved into a locker. Afterwards, Pinky walks Trevor almost all the way home, citing the joy it brings to Trevor when he gets closer to Pinky, even bragging to Walter about it, until Walter warns Trevor to keep his homosexuality a secret if he doesn't want to lose Pinky, later stumbling upon a journal, possibly containing a dozen names of Pinky written onto it, indicating that it could be filled with Trevor's fanfics containing his fantasies involving him, leading to Trevor testing shock treatment shortly after to try and cure his homosexuality. In the next diary entry, two girls named Mary and Fanny who look alike inform Trevor that the guys are talking behind his back, stressing the feeling of wanting to kill himself over this right now. Because keep in mind, Trevor loves Pinky Faraday, and if he's exposed as a homosexual nitwit towards him, they won't be friends anymore. That's totally not gonna happen, I think. However, he denies it and gives them a demonstration of how he doesn't walk like a girl to prove that he's not gay. The next day, Trevor's day went so bad that he literally practiced for his funeral. How? Well, it all began when Pinky started ignoring him. Trevor tries to call Pinky the other night, but his mother answered and told him that he couldn't speak to him, so Trevor decides to write a letter to Pinky explaining what had happened and giving it to him the next day. He later gets one back during lunch, and reads about how he is weak and a fairy, undeserving of the right to live, highlighting the chance of Trevor not being friends with Pinky anymore. Later that night, Trevor attempts to take a bus to San Francisco, only to have his plans foiled after his parents find him there. And to make it worse, he narrates how he's a prisoner in his own home after mom and dad found his diary. The day after that fiasco, the local priest Father Joe takes Trevor to the Dairy Queen, only to reveal that he was set up into listening to Joe Mama talk about how the wiener goes into the gabagoolina in a somewhat gross way.
The man's penis becomes blood engorged. It's hard.
and the man inserts it into the vagina of the woman, which is lubricated with its own natural juices.
I'm talking about sex! He was talking about sex! I don't really enjoy this scene that much. I mean, what kind of parent takes their kid to see a priest alone for this matter? Or better yet, what kind of priest or any other religious figure does that? The man's penis becomes blood engorged, my ass. Did he even tell him that he's supposed to do all that nasty sex stuff when he gets married or something? Does he have experience in getting laid despite being a priest and looking like George Santos?
Trevor? Have you ever had desires, and I'm talking about sexual desires, for another boy? Did you ever, for example, want to touch another boy?
So in the end, the priest grosses Trevor out and makes him look like an idiot talking to him, reminding himself to change his identity because of this, especially his religion. Also in the beginning, why invite a priest to have ice cream with your son if you're not religious? I'm not complaining or anything, I just feel like it's a bit out of touch in this film. I mean, there could have been other ways to confront your son's sexuality, like take him to church on a Sunday, but you know, Dairy Queen is still Dairy Queen, and I'd probably kill for a Dairy Queen right now if it was in my city. Surprisingly, there are no Dairy Queens in New York City, with the exception of the Staten Island ferry terminal, that is. Even after still being ignored by Pinky, Trevor notes in his diary feeling confident that someday he will move to somewhere glamorous and become so famous everybody wants to be photographed in his presence, but also imagines dying an early death. Trevor declares that his life is obviously a tragedy because everyone at school makes fun of him for being gay, and while Trevor looks at himself as if nothing's different about him, possibly because this is his true form and nobody can change him that way, nobody understands what he's feeling or going through at the moment, making him seem helpless in a world full of people who all act the same to Trevor.
Everybody at school saying that I'm gay. It must be showing. But I look at myself and I don't see anything that's different. No one understands. My life is now an obvious tragedy.
On the final day, Trevor narrates his suicide note to his parents about why he's doing this because he couldn't cure himself and how it would be a zillion times worse if he was still alive, taking his own life by overdosing on pills in the very end.
And don't cry too much. It would have been a skillion times worse if I had lived. Your loving son, Trevor.
There's only you in my life, the only thing that's right. My first love, your every breath that I take, your every step I make, and I want to share all my love with you. No one else will do. And your eyes, they tell me how much you care. Oh, yes, you will always be my endless love.
But that's not what happened! Trevor wakes up in a hospital, surviving his suicide attempt and chugging down the entire bottle of aspirin. He's later accompanied by Jack, who is a junior version of a nurse at the hospital. A candy striper, Jack informs Trevor that when people kill themselves, they have to come back and live their whole lives over again, advising Trevor to live his life one day at a time before he leaves the hospital. And just the next day, when Trevor narrates his final lines in the film, we just so happen to know that Trevor acquired a ticket to a Diana Ross concert and a potential friendship with Jack, giving him the confidence boost he rightfully deserves and a reason to live for another day. Now, honestly, this has got to be one of my favorite endings to a short film, especially when Trevor gets the good ending. Trevor extremely benefits from getting to see a Diana Ross in person, and a new boyfriend who is certified to attain education within the medical field. Even if Trevor is still apprehended with a gay relationship, he's still gonna benefit really well because his new friend is said to have a very successful career as a doctor. But even if it isn't common to others, a person can still maintain a delightful life no matter who they identify as long as they're destined to acquire the same skill and a trade to become as successful as them. In fact, my mom told me the other day while she was driving me to school about how her co-worker is transgender, yet she graduated from Cooper Union, a very prestigious school for arts and engineering in the lower Manhattan area. A school so prestigious that even Bob Kane, the creator of Batman, went there. And that now she works as an architect in the same city government agency as my mom works in. While writing this script, I can find that very relatable to Trevor's boyfriend, who has a bright future ahead of him, especially with Trevor. But the key point of what the ending finishes to construct is that you can still be yourself and live a happy life, as long as you live it your way, one step at a time, despite being gay, lesbian, trans, whatever. Unless if you're a pedophile, then you could just die. Though among that reason, there are a few more to take note of why Trevor means so much to me, as much to the LGBTQ youth that the Trevor Project aimed for. The film presents a strong perspective from the protagonist of what was it like growing up as a closeted homosexual in the early 80s in third person. It accurately illustrates the setting and the side characters' personalities to the time it took place in. Everyone but Jack seems to have been written to not understand Trevor's true intentions, and I get that Jack is very much the only kind and caring person Trevor can relate to, but everyone else important to the story seems to fall in the same line. Now, do keep in mind, the public's focus on the LGBTQ plus society was very mainstream during the 80s, though it wouldn't be in a very much positive manner. They remained tremendously active and played a big role in revolutionizing for the new tomorrow, despite many challenges holding them back, such as the AIDS crisis and aggravated homophobia from hateful folks and religious groups in general, the latter of which definitely reflects on the conflict of this film when we start to get a glimpse of Pinky's second opinions on Trevor, deeming him to be a fairy and someone who doesn't deserve to live in the letter he writes back, outlining his homophobia and rejection towards Trevor as a fairy would be a slur against homosexuals just like A similar concept would also apply to his parents who found out about his gay-ass sexuality, summoning the local priest to try reforming him somehow in the Dairy Queen parking lot. But those don't change Trevor's true character at all throughout the film, which we get to the next point with Trevor's character. Trevor's character has a dynamic but impressive setup. He's stereotypically based as mostly a theater kid. He also seems to be commonly omnipresent in a lot of somewhat obvious characteristics that build him, such as being a fan of Diana Ross and his destined career in musical theater, but his ability to adapt to one important element makes up for the clear gayness he holds in the film, and that is relatability. What makes Trevor's character remarkable in his relatability that not only sets the tone of the film, but connects the audience through it as well. Trevor links his homosexuality to his audience. The film is conveyed towards really well, because even though not many would have the habits Trevor has like them, he still proposes a moral concept of the different mind, especially the mind of a closeted homosexual when they are pictured in a society that really doesn't accept them and at worst opposes them for who they are. And it can be viewed clearly when Trevor experiences this type of society in the short film, so they don't have to, and that's how they make a great connection. The real issues of mental health and bullying for being gay that are portrayed in the film correlates with the Trevor Project organization in the 1994 film it was based on, and so does the appeal of it as well, to bring awareness to the situation that's going on with LGBTQ plus youth, because not only does this film showcase the unfortunate negativity gay people experience by being, well, you know, gay, but also express the positive outcome of being themselves and coming out whilst being supported by a community who can understand them and be protected by those who are willing to use their moral compass for once to save a genuine human being. The scene where Trevor narrates his decision to continue living for tomorrow after making a new friend and getting a Diana Ross concert ticket is what resembles the motto of the Trevor Project. It gets better, and the final scene conveys that because you may never know what will happen next if you continue living for another day. Tomorrow is a mystery, but also a sweet surprise full of potential opportunity and happiness if you breathe the new wind and grow from the past of yesterday, even if rarely anything changed in your life. And you should be lucky that you're still alive to this day, even if not everything is supposed to go your way. You have one life you still need to live till the end, so fulfill your desired promises, your dreams, your hope for peace and wholesomeness in your life. Those good memories you make out of life should count. You realize your true worth of who you really are as a person, and stay positive about yourself if you think about this on a deeper level. And I'm glad that the Trevor Project is spreading that mindset towards every gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, queer, and anyone else who's struggling to stay alive in this country. And despite it being a work of fiction, I'm glad that the Trevor short film brought that to light. And then they made a musical out of it. In 2017, the live-action stage show adaptation of Trevor opened mid-summer at Chicago's Writers' Theater. Later, it moved off-Broadway in the Schubert Organization's Stage 32 4 years later, initially being delayed a year before due to the coronavirus pandemic. Running through a mere 3 months, Disney decided to film Trevor the musical and distribute it to the streaming platform Disney Plus on January 2022. The musical received mixed reviews, but on account of forming my own opinion on it, I decided to watch it myself, and let me just say that this movie was extremely hard to pirate! No kidding! I spent like 4 fucking days trying to find working torrents with CDs for this film, and ripping this as a whole video file from 1 to 3 movies to use in my video. But after spending over 24 hours on BitTorrent, I finally managed to successfully get a working torrent under a website for which I cannot disclose the name of, so I apologize if this film seems low quality in its form. But overall, I quite liked it. Trevor the Musical is something every queer theater kid has ever dreamed of. You know, the theater kids who are obsessed with Vivzy Pop and get shoved into a locker so deep it becomes a luxury square-foot Manhattan apartment. No offense, theater kids. The music choreography was fun and creative. There are usually fun bits of comedy left and right, and the acting was superb, especially for the protagonist who was played by a random boy they casted out of 1,300 entries, considering the purposed actor for it had to miss out due to COVID. But the random casting still makes an exception because the musical Trevor seemed happier and more optimistic than the 1994 one. I guess in Broadway standards, that is. He sure got the moxie. But what I really find interesting about this musical is that it plays out similarly to the original 1994 short film, accurately portraying portraying the same time it took place and correlating with the events of it really well, even reenacting some of the lines and references that are connected with the Trevor film. They do a pretty impressive job of sticking to the source material, but the musical does have its fair share of differences as well. There are a plethora of differences between Trevor the 1994 short film and Trevor the musical, such as the Dairy Queen being renamed to Tasty Freeze. I guess Dairy Queen would be harder to trademark nowadays. And Trevor stuffing his Diana Ross posters in a trash bag instead of attempting to travel to San Francisco like in the 1994 film. Also, the parents are being fixated on Ronald Reagan's assassination attempt for some reason. But you know, it's the 80s. But the major difference between the film and musical is the overall expansion of the lore and characters associated with Trevor, and the emphasis on the detail too. A lot of extra things were added, especially for the main setting of the school, with the classmates being expressed with more value than from the film, giving more of a deeper insight of the events Trevor experiences in school or anywhere, with the involvement of his classmates, that is. Trevor also has an extra motive that sheds light on his interest in theater, which is to find success in it by hosting for his school's annual talent show, which goes horribly wrong. But the emphasis is also linked to the main problem I have with Trevor the musical. You see, the musical depicts all these affairs and relationships, usually straight or heterosexual ones, and the complicated relationships that play out in the show that get so bloated that it weakens Trevor's gay-ass narrative, making it seemingly focused on less throughout the musical, until later on when Trevor's revelations show that is. I mean, this is supposed to be a theatrical rendition of a coming-of-age story about a boy who's overcoming his insecurity and rejection for who he truly is, not a junior high rom-com. I also wasn't very comfortable watching Trevor's interaction with Jack in the musical compared to the movie. I don't think I'm up to snuff about why Trevor had an awkward conversation with him, even beginning the argument of deciding who is better, Diana Ross or Donna Summer, despite Jack offering some pretty valuable advice and a moving song to convince Trevor to reconsider his second opinions about himself. Although I could be wrong if this act's biggest intent was to build up the true resolution of the story, henceforth why meeting Jack was on a rocky start, which shifted from an awkward conversation to sing about what you're gonna be like 10 years later in the future. Actually, why is Diana Ross still living when Donna Summer died in 2012 despite being younger than her? Hold on, let me look up Donna's cause of death. Oh. She died from lung cancer related to the events of 9/11. Also, why does Walter Stiltman have a thing for teachers? Out of all of the things he could jerk off to, why choose Mrs. Kerr? I don't even find her that hot myself.
Turn the page until it's Mrs. Kerr.
What a goon! But you know, I could forgive all of that because it still manages to connect to the events of Trevor, for it was Trevor who brought all of this to light. The extended affairs, the stuff people do behind Trevor's back, the decisions of the parents regarding their son, all of these keep in check of the narrative to make sure nothing drifts away from it, making sure the moral values of the musical generally stick to Trevor and his homosexuality. Welp, I guess that's all for me to review about. Surely there's nothing we can talk about or criticize anymore after that.
Trevor, don't call me. Don't talk to me. You're a faggot.
Holy crap! What the heck was that? Looks like Pinky just pulled a Gumball Watterson on him fast, if you know what I mean.
Trevor, don't call me. Don't talk to me.
You're a faggot, alright?
But overall, I find the Trevor musical to be very pleasing, as it attempts to fill in the blanks and add extra detail to what the original short film is about, in a well-executed manner in the form of Broadway. It has a few quirks every now and then, but it manages pretty well to stay focused on the main narrative while loosely connecting other events to the plot, even if some of it wasn't necessary and all it needed was the bare minimum. They all stay in line to form one of life's biggest lessons in the end, and that is to move on with your gay-ass life and keep living for the moment whenever it truly comes, and that goes ditto for the 1994 short film. But you know, for one of the nation's most wholesome and least grueling organizations, I would never expect the origin of it to bulge out of the rest, especially coming from the 1994 short film that won an Oscar. Trevor is an amazing piece of indie film work that should be remembered as not only a cautionary tale to prevent us from committing suicide, but as a lesson for us all to live out your life the way you want, one step at a time, even if some might condemn it. And that definitely goes highlighted towards the LGBTQ plus community, for which it links a stronger connection to like 2 Lego bricks. Yet for a work of fiction, it's quite incredible how much an impact Trevor has made, so much to get a lightheaded musical out of it, though what really matters is the impact it had on the Trevor Project, because this movie was the main reason why the Trevor Project exists. The company that saved millions of gay lives wouldn't have happened if it weren't for the help of one fictional boy who loves Diana Ross. A fictional boy who destined his career for the stage despite many public boundaries that seemed impossible to pass during that time, and a fictional boy who came out of the closet just so countless of other kids like him could in reality. A fictional boy named Trevor. And if he were to exist in real life someday, Lord knows when he'll look back to see the amazing impact he had on millions of kids who could understand him and follow his path and smile. Thank you, Trevor. My name is Bohemius, and I want to remind you that you're not alone. If you need help, call this number below. It might just save yourself. Thanks for watching.
Positive, I think this time around